Welcome to the Oswego Alumni Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Perkins. Valentine's Day may be behind us, but this Oswego love story was too good not to share. Our guests are husband and wife SUNY Oswego alumni, educators, parents, and former small business owners whose paths crossed at just the right moment, almost not crossing at all. From long distance dating to career pivots to opening a business together, from building a family, their story reflects so much of what it means to be an Oswego alum and how resilience and never giving up is a key to their success. Let's welcome Rita Torsney-Sullivan and Pat Baker. Hi, everybody.
How's it going? Appreciate that intro. It actually really helps me understand and remember just how fortunate I really am.
Oh, well, you guys have an amazing story. And Rita, thank you for being here too.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Rita sent me a long email telling me your life story, and there was so much. There was just so much to talk about. But, let's start at the beginning. For listeners meeting you guys for the first time, can you each share your graduation year and what you're doing now?
So like I said, I'm Pat Baker. I'm a special education teacher in North Syracuse. I graduated in 2008 with a general education, childhood education degree. Then I went on to get my special education certification. A lot of vacations in there. We just got back from vacation. But yeah, that's pretty much my general what you just asked for. I think if I ramble, by the way, just give me the hook or I take off my mic or whatever you want to do.
We have no hooks here.
Okay, cool.
All right, Rita, go ahead. Tell everybody what you're doing.
So I graduated in 2009 with a marketing degree. I started out in computer science, and I actually changed in my junior year. And I'm happy that I went to SUNY Oswego, and it allowed me to try a couple different things before I settled on marketing. And after that, I ended up, I'm jumping a bit, but basically I work in events and alumni engagement now at SUNY Cortland. And I also got my MBA at St. John's University when I worked there in their alumni office as well.
So that's where we are today. I teased it and let everybody know there's a great love story here. So let's just go right to that. Rita, you told it really well. So Pat, I'm going to give her the floor.
Well, what's funny is I feel like seeing the reactions of each other adds the enjoyment of this story. But so basically, a mutual friend of ours, his name is Charles Ballion. Help me out, Pat.
Yeah, Balin,
sorry. But we call him Badger. That was his nickname. And basically, he invited both of us to hang out one night at his residence hall in Mackin to watch a hockey game. And both of us were like on the fence, it turned out, about going. Partially for me, I was working at like the help desk for IT support. And I was always like kind of, I think, picking up extra shifts or whatever. It was towards the end of the semester. So people were, calling out for their studying, among, I'm sure, other things. And so it was a later shift. And I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of tired. I don't know if I'm going to go. I don't even know anything about hockey. Like I was just going to go be social. And Pat was student teaching. So he student taught in Parrish and had quite the commute to get over there from Oswego. So he had to get up early morning. So he was saying that like it turned out he was kind of going back and forth on if he should go or not. And both of us, got enough energy, I guess, to go over and watch the game. And while we were hanging out there were some other friends that were hanging out. But like I said, I didn't know anything about hockey. And so Pat is telling me about all these things happening, and I'm very gullible. So he's making up plays and like making up all this other stuff. Like I kind of caught on at one point when he was telling me about like the burrito play that like
flaming burrito play.
Okay. That, he was just very silly. And, I definitely feel like he was, making jokes as he always does. And, just, he's very outgoing. And and I can be, but I think I was like tired. So he was, I was like, this guy is crazy, but like, I was enjoying chatting with him. And so we were gonna like kind of all head out on our different ways. And somebody suggested going to late night, which I think must have been in Mackin, that side one, or it was
No, it was at Johnson Hall. It was at Lakeside.
yeah, I was gonna say it had to be a buffet one because somebody. So basically, Pat was like, "Oh, I'm gonna head out. I don't have a meal plan." So somebody suggested like, "Oh, I could just give you my guest pass." So that was like one part where he was gonna leave, and that was gonna be it, right? So then we go over to eat. And we're eating and hanging out, and we're there for a bit. And he mentions, "Oh, I gotta get going. I gotta get up early." And it happened to be that, like, totally random, but my ex-boyfriend's brother came to sit at the table with us right before Pat got up, and he made a joke like, "Oh, what, you're gonna leave because I sat down?" And Pat felt awkward, so he was like, "Oh no, I can hang out for a little longer." And we're chatting, and that gave him the opportunity to make a very suave, invite to me. Basically, we were talking about a movie, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and I was saying like, "Oh, that's that would be a really." Like I want to see the movie basically. And so he goes, "Oh, so when are we going to go see it?" And I'm like, "Oh, excuse me," and he's like, "Yeah, when are we going to go see it?" So that was his way of asking me out, which, I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. That sounds good." So, we went to go see it, I think maybe like the next week or whatever. And a sidebar, that was the most awkward first date ever. There are a lot of, male frontal nudity scenes in that, and it was super awkward, but also a funny story for a first date.
I really have to interrupt here and say, Pat, did you have any idea how much full frontal nudity for men is in this movie?
No, because that was like at an era like where I feel like that was just starting to like tip in the opposite direction from like all the 80s and 90s comedies. It was all like the other way around,
Right.
And I had never seen it on the big screen, to be honest, no shock there. But like I literally was like, it's like one of the first like 5 minutes, and I'm like, wait, what? And
Right.
yeah, and again, yeah, I'm on my first date with Rita, and I'm like, what's gonna happen? Is she gonna leave? She did not leave.
Kristen Bell is breaking up with Jason
Siegel.
Segel.
Yep.
And he's just come out of the shower. I can't believe I remember this, but it's a really great movie. And he's just naked. And I remember the first time I saw it. But then it gets even crazier from that point on because he has a vampire puppet show that's a musical. So did you guys love this movie, or were you both like, or did this solidify your relationship?
To be honest, you just told me more about the movie than I remember at all, other than there was a lot of male frontal nudity, and I just felt super awkward.
We definitely like those two and other movies in general, like because like we watched like How I Met Your Mother. I love the Muppets, and Jason Segel helped to like relaunch the Muppets back in the day. Kristen Bell we see on a lot of things like The Good Place.
I love it.
So like I think it's just those two people in general we really like. But yeah, like Rita said, like we own the movie, and like I'll throw it on now and then. But yeah, like I said, I think we
Don't
just
lie.
remember the moment.
You do not throw it on at all. I think we just own it for memento's sake. Don't lie.
Well, it's okay because our first date for my husband and me was When Harry Met Sally. And
Oh,
recently they've been playing it and talking about it. It must be an anniversary or something. And I'm like, have I seen it since our first date? Because I'm really not sure.
yeah.
So after that, you go to a movie together. How does the relationship progress?
So like I remember like like hanging out, like we played croquet out in front of in the field house Johnson Hall. We just like we hung out a lot. And then it was probably like a month later I graduated basically because this was like April. And so I had an interview to go and teach down in Virginia, and Rita came with me, and I didn't know if I was going to get the job or not. I ended up getting the job, and it was one of those things. You just kind of made the decision right there, like, well, let's do the summer. Do the summer in Syracuse and see what happens. And we had a great summer. We had a thing called the Summer Challenge, where basically either one of us could challenge each other to do something at the top spur of the moment. Right, like I remember one night I was just like, "All right, I'm gonna race you to the shed," which no longer exists. And so we just like took off running. We did one challenge where we had to make my grandfather laugh by going out and buying novelty goofy items, and whoever made him laugh got the point for that. One we did like a penny counting one. We had to find a book in Penfield Library, just randomly. We had somebody at the desk say, "Go find this book." So I think that just kind of made like it made me know anyway that Rita was very fun. She had a lot of energy, but she was up for anything. And honestly, the way that she um acted around my family, like how she showed care for my grandparents, especially like right off the bat. I'm like, yeah, she's cool. She's not afraid of seeing anything in my family because again, I have a lot of special needs people in my part of our family, and it just, I don't know. There's certain people that might not treat that the way that she did. And so when I left to go to Virginia at the end of the summer, I didn't have any concerns. Like I felt like we were going in the right direction. And also being, long distance, we talked on the phone for like hours every day for the better part of a year. We got to know each other very well, and we didn't have what we're doing right now. So it was called Uvu. Well, you could use that at a time that was kind of like a streaming Zoom kind of service. So like again, just we got to know each other verbally and really pick each other's brains, and I think that like really helped me to know who she was and vice versa. And we talk about this all the time, where even when we get into arguments, right, or debates or whatever you want to call them, if we disagree on something, even if we get upset, like we know that we can talk it out, because we had that practice, like, we had that. That strength building in the sense of like, because right off the bat we had to talk about things.
And
Yeah.
Rita, you told me that there was a little bit of a secret that Pat was holding back in the beginning, something to do
Oh,
with
sure.
age.
Yes. So, well, yeah, there's a couple of things I want to mention. So, yeah, sure, that definitely. So he was a non-traditional student at that point, and he, um, like, I didn't even think about it. I mean, he looks younger than his age, and so he kind of was like being really sketchy, to be honest, about it. Like, he's like, I don't want to tell you my age; it's gonna freak you out. And so, like, I'm like you don't look like you're like 60. Like, what could this be, And so I was like, just tell me, like, rip off the Band-Aid. And it turned out that, he's like 6 years older than me. And it kind of is like funny how it works out because I have a sister who's 7 years older than me. So I'm very familiar with things that probably people who were my age that didn't have an older sibling were familiar with, just because I would obviously like follow her around, watch TV shows, and listen to the music that she did. So I think we have a lot of things in common because of that. And, we're both pretty nostalgic people. So, I think that gap to me, like, really was not much of anything when he finally revealed, like, the big secret,
Wasn't a big secret.
You acted like it wasn't. You freaked me out. I was like, what the heck? Like, but yeah, I wanted to say too, when Pat was kind of mentioning like the fact that he was moving to Virginia. I mean, we had like met each other for a month and we had to decide were we going to be long distance for a year after knowing each other a month. So, like, I think he's, as you can kind of tell, right, like the challenge and stuff was all his idea. So he's very fun loving, and I just kind of go for the ride, I feel like. But so like it kind of worked out where he's from Syracuse, and I decided, like, I'm originally from Staten Island, New York, and I decided to stay up for the summer and do an internship, mainly so that we can continue like dating. And then he was very creative, I would say, too, in finding things like before the pandemic, right? Like he found that Uvu, and we were doing like video chats before that was really a thing. And then if you see, like, I don't even feel like it's a thing now, but during the pandemic, they had the watch parties where you can have multiple people watch like a Netflix show at the same time. So we would both have like Netflix on and be like 1, 2, 3, play, and then like wait, pause, play, okay, and like line it up, and we would watch movies together and do all that stuff that, like, if only we had the foresight to be like, we can monetize this, like turn this into a big thing. But yeah, I mean, I think, that did help with our communication a lot when he was, when we were long distance for such long periods of time. And then, as I don't know if we'll get to it later, but there were times where we moved to different places, and between each time we kind of had to be long distance, even while we were married for a couple months and things, just to make things all work out. So I definitely feel like it's really, helped us strengthen our relationship.
I still do that thing where you watch something together every night. My best friend lives in Boston and we call it co-watch. So
Nice.
branded co-watch. Thanks, Susie. All right, so now he leaves. He's in Virginia. How much time do you have left in school before then you're free?
Sure. So I had another year. I technically could have graduated early, and I decided to take advantage of, again, like the price of SUNY Oswego. I decided to study abroad. I wanted to graduate in May and walk with people that I was friends with. And I technically did stay a fifth year, but there were people who I knew who got their master's or what have you. So I was able to walk with some friends. And so we basically would visit each other during different breaks. As a teacher, he had a couple breaks. And then as a college student, I had a couple breaks, and we would just stay with each other for like a week or what have you during that time. And then basically when I was graduating, we decided that we would move to wherever we got a job first. And I was gunning for New York City area, and Pat was trying to find a job in Syracuse area. And I actually helped him find his first job in Syracuse. And I was kicking and screaming the whole way there. But we obviously needed income. And so we basically moved to Syracuse and moved in together, off the bat.
Where were you working in Syracuse?
Me?
No,
so
Rita.
Oh, okay.
Pat, get off it. Get the hook. Rita, where did you wind up getting a job?
So it took me a bit of time. I was temping for a while, and then I ended up working at a market research company called KSNR, and it's still around. And I worked there for around 8 years, and I was able to kind of hop around. I started, as an entry role, and I got a promotion. And although market research I do find it very interesting, and it gave me a lot of skills that I could use later on. I kind of didn't feel like it was fulfilling in a lot of ways. I mean, the companies that were our clients were like those big box kind of stores, and it just didn't feel like, it was the same report every month and every week sometimes that we would be giving. And there was literally a day where my client asked, "Hey, did you give me that report last month?" And it was close to the end of the month. And I was like, what am I doing? Spending 40 hours, 50 hours a week on these reports. And this guy clearly didn't even look at it. And he's never going to look at it because next week I'm giving him a new report. And, I realized that it just really wasn't for me. And I feel like what's tough for a lot of people who are in the business field is there's you could almost do anything in a lot of ways, and there's the same title for the same job. And I'm sorry, there's 5 million different titles for the same job in the 5 million different places. So I actually went to a career coach in Syracuse. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to move. My niece was born in Staten Island, and I wanted to be close to her and my family and build traditions. So we already knew we were kind of planning that move, and I was getting very overwhelmed with the job hunt. And he suggested I kind of pare down what it was I was looking for. And I knew I wanted to do something where I felt like I was giving back. So it was nonprofit or higher education. And after looking at some postings, I figured higher education. And while I was working to kind of fulfill that need to give back, I was doing a lot of volunteer work. So there's a nonprofit called Sarah's Guest House in Syracuse. It's kind of a Ronald McDonald's house, but for adults. So I helped out with some of their galas and fundraisers. I ended up being on the board for them for a couple years. And in addition to that, there is a video game convention in Syracuse called Retro Game Con. And it is obviously retro, but also current video games. And it's a huge show, but it started with maybe 300 people, Pat, and we were one of the first vendors. Yeah, there were maybe 10 vendors selling stuff, and we happened to collect video games. Pat is, I won't say obsessed, but I will say obsessed with video games and wrestling. And so, we had some just extra things lying around. We figured we, sell them at this show. And I mentioned to the guy that, I reached out and I said, hey, I'd be happy to help, do some volunteer work for you. And I was involved with that show, I think like 3 or 4 years. And each year I took on more responsibility and I helped run it. And it was a great experience. It was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And I feel like it really opened up, like that show opened up like so many things for us now in terms of like friends. Like we do a lot of shows around mainly the Northeast, and it's like almost like a convention family. The same kind of people do all these shows in those areas, and we get to see them and hang out with them, and we've made a lot of friends from it. And it also, at one point you had kind of mentioned we opened up a store.
I was going to get to that. I was going to ask Pat that. So go ahead, pause.
Pat can take over, but I think that again, that was like kind of the beginnings of us like realizing like, this was something that could be more than a hobby in a lot of ways for us.
Pat's dying. He's like, is she going to ask me about video games?
Yeah, right?
I mean, I really want her to ask me about video games. I hope she knows that I like video games. So Pat, I guess you like video games, and you guys decide while you're here in Syracuse, a good idea would be to open up a storefront. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so yeah, we opened up Gizmo's Video Games and Wrestling out in North Syracuse, and I have a background in retail as well. I was big into KB Toys. I worked there for a very long time before I went to school for anything. So I always liked that part of it, and we were looking around just to see what does retail really look like, in Syracuse. I mean, is it really expensive? Whatever. We found this place that was very cheap. And so we said, let's just give it a shot. It was a month-to-month lease, so we decided to kind of like with the convention. We just had a bunch of random stuff. We filled the shelves what we had, and we realized very early on that like we had a good niche for it, or a good skill set for it, and the people of North Syracuse really wanted a store. So it kind of just exploded from there, and so yeah, that's how we basically started Gizmo's Video Games and Wrestling. Gizmo still does exist as far as like, but it's now it's like a convention touring, business basically more than an actual brick and mortar.
When you left for Staten Island, it became overwhelming to try and manage a
Oh
store.
yeah,
Yeah,
it did.
Very tough. Well, we had one thing I wanted to say is so the End Wrestling. A lot of people were like, "Oh, do people wrestle there?"
Yeah.
But it was just wrestling collectibles, and Pat is an encyclopedia for both of those things. So, and it really worked out because I had always wanted to open a business, but I think I don't have enough expertise in a thing. So he did all like that sales kind of thing and knew about all the products, and I did the back end of like all the fun paperwork that I enjoy, getting all that stuff situated. But yeah, his cousin, Chris, had run the store for us, and he really ran it like his own. And when we moved away, he happened to move away to Colorado, and the person that we kind of moved up, because he happened to work there, I don't think was really ready for management. So it was just very difficult.
Pat, all this time that you're opening a store, you're still teaching, right?
Yeah. Yep. And like being local, it was hard, but not as bad because like I'd get out of work, teaching at like say 3:30, and then I can just zip over to the store. And because the business hours were like I think we were open for at 12, just the first couple hours of being open each day, I wasn't there. But yeah, just being local, it was pretty easy to get there, and there's no traffic in Syracuse, so just kind of get in between places. But yeah, no, once you moved to New York City, it was like, yeah, it's like a 5-hour drive just to get to Syracuse.
How hard was it, Pat, for you to leave your hometown to go to Staten Island?
So it really wasn't because I've lived quite a few places. Like even when I lived in Orlando, Florida for about 4 or 5 years prior to that. And then, living in Virginia, I didn't enjoy Virginia, but, Rita, obviously we made that work. But, I miss Syracuse, right? I mean, like I'm definitely like a Syracuse born and raised. But I also like to explore, so like it really wasn't that bad. And also the reality is, Rita had made so many sacrifices for us, that I felt I wanted to do it for us. And also, just like she said, like, with our niece, I don't know if we're saying names, but, the bottom line, it's Cecilia. I mean, it's all good, she's great, and I was super happy to, have a niece. And I also wanted to be there for her beginning part of her life, especially because again, it's very special. And I have great memories and continue to make them with her. So I was pretty ready to go as well. You know, with teaching, with tenure and retirement and all that, that's been a little tricky over the years, just because not everything transfers easily, but that's a story for another day. Um, but long story even longer. Just the bottom line is, yeah, it was cool. I mean, I definitely was like, yeah, I tried to basically get a job down there so we can move down as well. So
I love that you also led me into, I really had to tell this story. You've lived many places. One of them was Orlando, and something happened there where you wound up living at Waffle House for a while. Can you tell that
yeah.
story?
Sure. So basically, this is 2000, 2001. Well, 2001 when this actually happened. So I moved down to Florida to be part of the Walt Disney World College program. And my second stint with the college program, my roommates were a little unique. There's a lot of like drugs and things they weren't supposed to be doing, and I didn't feel comfortable living there anymore. So I left Disney, and in between, I got a job to work at Universal Studios. I was going to be working at the Kodak Picture Spot, and then a little something called 9/11 happens, and I got hired at Universal, but I was never able to officially start because everything froze right then and there. So I had an ID and not much else. And so I was not able to keep the place I was going to be living in. So I had to basically, I was on the street for the better part of about 4 weeks, just going around all over Orlando, Florida, trying to find a place that would hire me. Everybody was locked up. Nobody was trying to hire anybody because nobody knew what was going on. And I was going to any place that I could do anything. And ultimately, I got a job working at Waffle House, third shift. And basically, in between shifts, I would sleep in the back room near the prep table. So I worked there for, I think, ended up being like a month, give or take. Then I got a job at a movie theater, and then I kind of like rolled in from there. But yeah, it was not an enjoyable month. It definitely, I learned a lot, but so that's the thing too. I always think about with people that are homeless, right? Or even if they're not, but just like every person in this world, I think it's important to think about them that they're one moment away from the bottom dropping out completely. Like right now, I feel that Rita and I are very fortunate in our life. We both have jobs, we both have a child, everything, but it could just take literally one thing that can make everything just go on its head.
100%, you're right. So, Rita, you leave Syracuse to go back home to Staten Island. What did you forget about living in the city when you got there?
Sure. I mean, the biggest thing is traffic. I think that it when we go back now, because jumping forward, we do live in Syracuse again now, and I definitely don't miss it. I will say that one thing I was kind of surprised about was that although Syracuse has Onondaga Lake, I did not realize, even though, so obviously New York City is all islands, but when you live there, you do not think about that you're on an island. And so it was funny because I had a commute that was an hour and a half to work. As I mentioned earlier, I worked at St. John's University, which is in Queens, and we lived on Staten Island. So I would have an hour and a half commute one way. But at the first couple of weeks, I loved being, right along the ocean, driving and what have you. But to be honest, that got old pretty fast with the bumper to bumper traffic. But I also think, I kind of mentioned that, we did come back to Syracuse, and part of it was the cost of living is just crazy in Staten Island, and whatever I thought it was going to be, it just wasn't. Like all of my friends had moved out from Staten Island area because the cost of living was so high, and it was like almost ironic because I felt like I actually saw my family more when we lived in Syracuse because I would go down once a month and it would be a big to do and plans. And, when you live there, it's like, oh, we'll get together later or whatever. So, kind of jumping forward ahead, Pat's parents needed some help, and we moved back, and with our son and everything else, like it was just, we were in a place where I was like, I'm ready to come back and, be able to like go out to restaurants whenever we want and, be, they call it house poor, right? You own a house, but like you have no money to do anything else. That's what I felt like we were in Staten Island. Like we had a very nice house. It was, it was nice after we fixed it up. It was a fixer-upper because that was all we could afford. But, it was built in like 1900s, an old house, and it was bittersweet to leave. But, now we we have a house in Syracuse, and it's just better. What is it like? Kind of the work-life balance and all that, you know.
And you brought somebody new back from Staten Island to Syracuse, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, we adopted our son Orion. He's 4 now, but yeah, that was a whirlwind. We if you know anything about adoption, like you just never know, obviously, when it's going to happen, when you might get a call or what have you. And we had no idea that, like, basically we were talking about like restarting because during the pandemic everything kind of shut down. So we put a pause on like our whole process, and we were doing private adoption. So it was through an attorney, and usually you kind of like put yourself out there on Facebook and what have you. And we were volunteering and involved with this nonprofit group that unfortunately is no longer around, but it was about adoption education. And there was an emergency placement, basically, where an agency had a baby that was born, and there was an international family that was supposed to adopt him. And when he was born, they found out that he had Down syndrome, and I don't think special needs or particularly Down syndrome is as accepted, I think, in other countries as in the U.S. And they basically backed out, and the agency needed somebody to basically, like I said, have like an emergency placement, and so they reached out to the organization, and they knew that we were very open to adopting a child with special needs. And so he was born on a Tuesday. We found out about him on a Friday. And it was a whirlwind. We had to redo all of this stuff that we had already done for the private adoption through the agency, because they don't take all the stuff. So we had to do a background check over again, fingerprinting, getting, for when you go to the NICU, you have to have like whooping cough. We had to get a COVID booster. So luckily my job was very flexible, my boss, and he was like, you do whatever you need to do. So I was calling and making appointments for me. I was like, anytime you can get me in. And then sometime after 3 p.m. for my husband. So I was like, rushing around. And in a week, we were able to redo all the things we needed to do. So we were able to visit him at that 1 week later. And then luckily, the hospital was in White Plains, and they have a 24-hour NICU. So we didn't have to take off any time from work. We would just work, go drive the hour and a half to White Plains. And there was like a checkoff list, make sure you know how to burp the baby, feed the baby, put him in the car seat. And so we did that for the next week, and we brought him home at 3 weeks. And I will say, thank God for Amazon, because we had nothing. So we were like ordering all of this stuff, every day. I was like ordering more stuff to come to the door. And we really didn't even tell anybody because I was worried it would fall through. So really only like my parents, really knew at first, and obviously my siblings and Pat's family. But, we really didn't like announce it to our friends till we brought him home. Like I wasn't comfortable. But my mom went on a grandma shopping spree with us. She's the first one to buy him anything. And we went to Kohl's, and she got a whole bunch of stuff for him. So, and it was a whirlwind, but obviously it all worked out.
Were you already in the process of moving back to Syracuse at this point?
No.
Yeah, no. Go ahead, Pat.
No. Yeah, no. This was about 2 years before we actually moved back. It was funny, just a small little thing about like how nobody knew about it. It was right around Christmas, and we were coming back to Syracuse. We'll say like January, right? Beginning of January, and we were going to surprise people. And the first person we surprised, we actually ran into at the Walmart. We got in very late, had to grab something at Walmart, and she just walks past us, and I'm like, "Oh, it's their son," and like it was just kind of like surprise.
Oh my God, that is a surprise.
Yeah.
So did having the baby kind of make you change your mind about staying in Staten Island? Was that the impetus?
Maybe I have different answers.
No, I mean, yes, yes, yes and no. In the sense of there's not a no at all. Basically, I don't know if we're gonna get into it, but an event happened at my job that made me really rethink as far as like I feel like there was we don't have to get too deep into it, but like there was a shooting right outside of my school when I was teaching down in Staten Island that I was involved with, and not shooting, but like when that happened, that really like put a lot on me as like my mortality, even more so than ever. I'm always very anxious about that, and I don't know. I just didn't feel safe in the general area that I was teaching at the moment, and it just felt I need to make a change as far as that. And a lot of that had to do with like I felt like I really need to be around for Orion. So yeah, not to like really bring it down right now, but obviously I want our friends and family up here to see him and be part of it too. But
Yeah, I mean, I think though that a lot of it is, I mean, he's an only child, right? So Pat is an only child. So, his parents needed help. And I think we were ready for a change because of, and I don't think that Orion was necessarily like a deciding factor, but just the fact that, like we want to be able to do things as a family or just, whatever. The cost of living, it just made more sense to move to Syracuse and be able to do more things and again go on vacations annually and just things that we were going on like weekend kind of getaways and family vacations. My parents are were lucky enough that they have like a timeshare, so they would invite us to places. But like when we first lived in Syracuse, we were spoiled rotten, and I missed that. So, and to be honest, I mean, there's programs everywhere, I think, for kids with special needs, but it is very surprising to me. Syracuse area has a ton of programs and resources that are just like very readily available, it feels like. I think, again, like just everything kind of lined up. And I was just like in a very different place in my life where I'm like, I'm ready to just go somewhere that we can just never move again because we are pack rats. And with the video game obsession, I mean, Pat, I don't know if I had mentioned this to you in that email, but he had a goal, for example, to own every single American-made video game system. And, just to give an example, and he checked that off a couple months ago in his mind. There's a couple of accessories that I count as not having, means that we do not have that complete, but I'm a little bit more of a perfectionist, I think, than Pat. But, so things like that, it's like you can't have that kind of space in Staten Island on the salaries that we had. And, again, it makes a lot more sense to be in central New York for us.
Yeah, and a lot of our friends up here, have younger kids, whereas we didn't have a lot of that down in Staten Island. And also in New York City with traffic and everything, when everybody gets out of work, they just want to get home. Here it's like we want to get home, but then we have time after that too, because we're not stuck, bumper to bumper anywhere.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So what do you guys know as special needs parents now that you didn't know before?
So yeah, so I have a lot of background in special needs. Myself, I was actually a special education kid. I had an IEP. Well, it was called something different back then. But anyway, so I mean, like I had a lot of background in it, just with family members and professionally. But to really answer your question is, it's patience in the sense of not just the patience of being a parent, because everybody's got that, but it's the patience of the speed of the journey. Because like there were times so he, like Rita said, Orion is 4. But he's still like he's on a milestone track that is kind of like, parallel with like a 2-year-old. And there was times, especially early on, when like our friends would have like a 1.5-year-old kid that's running around the kitchen, and Orion really is still learning how to crawl. Or just verbally, you know what I mean? Like, cause again, he doesn't speak as clearly or know all the words that some kids do. So we do sign language. And that's just one of those things is like, just having to understand once again, that patience of progress. But we wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, like he's doing awesome. It's just, that's something that, it did change my view on what it would be like, I guess, if that sounds hopefully okay.
Rita, how about you?
I think for me, similar to what Pat is saying, I do think it's like, when your friends have kids that are hitting milestones, right? You want to be happy for them. And like a little piece of you is a little bit sad, I guess, is in some ways that it's like, oh, Orion's not doing that, or he won't be doing that for a while, or who knows if he'll ever be doing that kind of thing. But I will say for me, like, I mean, I was kind of raised to be very like, unless it's an A, it's not worth it, and, just you got to do everything perfect and right. And I definitely was worried about being like that as a parent. And, you got to throw all that out the window when you have a child with special needs. And to be honest, it was kind of like, I think, a good thing, because I knew I didn't want to be like that even for like a neurotypical child, but it's really hard to like to get rid of some of those habits, I guess I would say, or the way of mentally thinking. And I feel like with Orion, it's really just like, yeah, obviously it's, I think a pretty common saying, but like the hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And I think we really had to do that. And I definitely feel like I have realized I'm a lot stronger, I think, in a lot of ways than I ever thought I could be. Whether it be like emotionally or like, I do find, Pat, he kind of mentioned he's very high anxiety about things and very stressed out. And it's something that I notice is like, if somebody is not like that strong, like person in a situation, I will probably be like that, kind of like running around with my head cut off. But if somebody is stressing out, I will just step up and be like, all right, we're gonna just breathe, we're gonna calm down, we'll get through it, we'll take care of it. And I definitely have done that a lot more than I guess I planned to be. And I think there's things that it's like, I don't know how to word it, but like, I mean, he's had to get procedures done and things like that. And I think putting on like a strong face, like, I don't know how to word it. Like, basically, it's like I basically will just push down all emotions till after it's done, and then not realize how stressed out I really was until afterwards, where it's like just that release of like crying or whatever. And, I think seeing the progress with him every year really is great. And, I think too, it lets me have more grace. I think maybe just even being a parent in general, right? You're like, oh my gosh, like, look at, that kid running around or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just, it is what it is, right? Like, for example, he never keeps his shoes on. His socks and shoes will not keep them on. And at times I'm like, all right, you're just going to run around the store without shoes. I just can't, And like, it's funny because I'm like, I am definitely one of those parents that if I were in that Target, I would be like, what the heck is wrong with these people? And it's like, you do what you can do and you try your best, and it is what it is.
From an old special needs mom, I will tell you, you're doing great. You sound like you're doing all the right things, and the looks that you get from the typical parents, you just kind of gotta let it go,
Yep.
Because they don't know. And your job is to keep him happy and keep yourself happy. So keep doing what you're doing. You sound great. You sound like you're doing really a great job.
Thank you.
Orion, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. So, of course, there is the Orion constellation. Pat, there's Orion Path in Syracuse. I don't think you named your child after a street. So, where did it come from?
Yeah, what's funny is Orion Path in Liverpool, and yeah, I always drove by that. And then there's also a Rita in North Syracuse. But
Yes.
yeah. So no, so for me, like, you always have your names, right? Of like, as a school teacher, especially, I have a list of names a mile long that I'm like, no, this is not happening. It's like, I'm like, oh, that kid, no. But no, like so there's a couple Orions in our life, and it's funny because it's a rare name, but apparently not. I had this one student named Orion way back in the day, and he was the funniest little kid. He was only in first grade, and he just always made me laugh. And I remember one day where like I was getting the kids ready to get dismissed and everything, and I just turned my back to write something on the whiteboard. And in the split second I turned back around, he was dressed as Batman. Like, he just had put on a whole costume while sitting at this, and that's something that always sticks out with me. I actually see this kid now. He's in his 20s. Makes me feel old. Older, Rita. But anyway, so Orion has always been a name that I like. We have a good friend of ours whose son is also named Orion. Again, great kid. So Orion was always there. Like, I always just liked that name. And so, like, when we were talking about names that we liked, that was one that we both, agreed on. We both kind of enjoyed. I think that I answered the question that you're asking.
I think I got to add something, though.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
I've had this name picked out since high school.
Oh, well,
So
yeah.
I basically kind of lucked out because I was like, this is what it's going to be, whether you like it or not. But luckily, he had these good connotations with it. But I will say, too, that so another name high up on the list was Oliver.
This is
And
crazy.
yeah, and basically when he was in the hospital, his birth mother didn't want to name him. I guess, didn't want to have that maybe attachment. I don't really know, the details, but she never named him. So the nurse, one of the nurses there, started calling him Oliver as a name placement because it would just be baby boy, whatever the last name was. And so like it was kind of perfect because one, I like the alliteration. My name is Rita Rose, and I like that alliteration. So I wanted to have kind of alliteration with his name. And so Oliver was what they were calling him, and that's what we made his middle name. So again, like just these signs and things, it's just so funny how it all works out.
Yeah, because that was like number 2 on our list. So I was like, oh, well, that's really weird.
So he's Orion Oliver.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, I love it. Beautiful. All right, so we're coming down to the final minutes. I told you I would only keep you for so long, even though we could go a lot longer.
This is the talent show, right?
It's an extended dance version. Don't worry,
Yes.
I have one more question about video games. All right, so this is a little lightning round, just like quick answers, and I'm naming the person I want to answer. So, Rita, favorite Oswego memory?
Oh boy, putting me on the spot here. Well, I will say the big winter storm. What was that?
I think 06 or 07.
The snow was higher than the cars. We were walking higher than the cars.
And they had one of those this year too. Pat, this is going to be a hard one. Best video game released in the last year.
In the last year. Good Lord. I can't afford video games anymore. So I will say Super Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Rita, best sewing machine for a beginner.
Oh, a beginner. I feel like any sewing machine you could probably just grab and learn the basics on. So, I mean, I really only know like Singer is like the main one I feel like I've always used. So I'll go with Singer.
That was some deep research by me that you're a sewing machine fan. Pat, best Oswego sub shop order.
Oh man. Well, it used to be the Eric Cole, the cheeseburger sub with the hot sauce from Sub Shop. So I'll just stick with that.
And then last, Rita, if a student right now called you on the phone and said, what is the Oswego experience that's going to help me the most in life after Oswego, what would you tell them?
I think just taking advantage of the opportunities. I think the study abroad was really amazing experience. I was part of the honors program. I think that really helped me connect with a lot of other students. And Johnson Hall, I mean, when you're a freshman, I definitely think Johnson Hall was amazing to make connections as well.
So the last question we always ask on the podcast, and you both get to answer it, is if you won an Oscar or an Emmy or some game show award, who would you, when you get up at the podium, who would you thank? It could be a student, could be a teacher. Who would you thank? So Pat, you go first.
It would be my dad. He definitely accomplished a lot with a little. And like he had a lot thrown at him throughout his life that was very hard, and he never gave up or lost his like smile or sense of humor. So he always showed me what it's like to like just keep pushing, and always showing love and support to the people around him. So it'd be my father.
Aw. Okay, Rita, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it might be like a cookie cutter answer, but Pat and Orion, my family and everything. I mean, if you're talking about if there was a professor that had made an impact, I feel completely terrible because I cannot remember his name for the life of me. But there was a computer science professor that I had. I have to look up his name, but I don't even know if he's around anymore. But he was like always just so positive, and he was really great professor that even after I transferred, I would still kind of pop in and say hi to him. I'll have to look up his name now because I don't remember. But yeah.
We'll put it in the comments.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for making the time. I know you both lead very busy lives, and I appreciate you being on today so much.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to reach out to Rita, you gave me your LinkedIn. Pat, I don't know. Are you on LinkedIn?
I probably am. I don't use it, but I do think I'm on there. But I mean, you could look me up on like Facebook, or just look for like a zoomed in picture of a dog's face. That's that's my profile image.
And if anyone who's listening wants to reach out with guest ideas, you can find us on Facebook or LinkedIn, or email us at alumni@oswego.edu. We're always looking for ideas from our over 95,000 alumni. I'm Dee Perkins with the Oswego Alumni Podcast.